Oh my gosh, welcome to another Unapologetic Women Share. My voice is a little scratchy today, and I'm unapologetic about that. Sherry's in a sling today, and she is unapologetic about that. So I hope all of you who are watching this are feeling in that unapologetic mood, mode, energy, focus, and you will join us for our lovely guest today, Amy Getz. Sherry, please tell us who she is and why she's so fabulous.
I would love to. I'm so excited for you to be with us, Amy. So I'm going to read your bio. So Amy Getz believes wealth and financial freedom are for everyone. She's a financial advisor with IRC Wealth, and she's a CPA, and she is a CDFA, which is a certified divorce financial analyst. And boy, we know that that's something that's needed when
Yeah.
somebody splits up. You got to figure out the money, right?
Yes.
Amy is on a mission to educate women about their finances and empower them to set big goals for their financial future. She loves helping people let go of limiting beliefs around money and facing the real numbers that allow people to quiet the stress loop in their minds and elevate everyone around them. Wealthy women change the world. I love that. I think that is amazing to have that as a mantra that wealthy women will change the world. So,
I do too. And we are missing you, Donna, waiting for her to get back. But you, Donna, will be the first one to say that she feels that women are the most underpaid people ever. I didn't say it quite like you, Donna says it, but I'm sure she's excited to watch what our conversation's going to be about as well. So, Amy, you must have something that you want to share, but I just have to get this out of me. It is so important about finances and divorce. I got divorced after being married for 32 years, got married at 17.
wow.
So was married very young and, still just thinking like, okay, that's how the world works. So I think there are a lot of women out there who get married at a very early age and they get divorced, and the mindset is so important because we don't just like divorce one person and then move into another relationship and have everything go the way it went the first time around. And that was something that was an experience for me. I thought like, oh, this is the way marriage works. This is the way sharing works. This is the way. But, when we get in our 40s, 50s, 60s, or whatever, and we are experiencing another relationship or marriage go around, we need to know who we are and why we're so fabulous and what we bring to the table before we just jump into something that is a past energy, I'll just say. So
Oh,
that
I
was my
totally
take on what you said.
I totally agree with that. Right. And I think we need to, oftentimes women can abdicate their role when it comes to the finances,
Mhm.
whether that's in business relationships or romantic relationships. And my goal is to encourage women to feel empowered and to want to know the numbers and to want to be an active participant. I always say personal finance is a team sport. It's not
Mhm.
meant to be done alone or in a vacuum.
Right.
And oftentimes it feels like with women that I speak to, well, I don't know, it's difficult. And I always remind people that, the monster under the bed, when you actually turn the lights on and look, it's not really there. So we can oftentimes create more of a struggle, more of it being out of our reach in our minds. And if we just pause, kind of take some deep breaths, look at our limiting beliefs, and start to just look at the data, understanding our numbers, then it almost takes the charge out of it, and we can have a more relative conversations. We can offer our opinion. We can feel more educated, and when we feel more educated, we show up differently.
Mhm. And
I think that is so true. And I was just thinking too that I can imagine, and you're saying that you were in who knows how long your marriage was great before you felt like you needed to, separate, Nancy. But I can only imagine that women oftentimes they feel unempowered in a relationship, but they feel somewhat dependent because of financial, limitations and feeling like they don't have the stability to be on their own feet, and that keeps them. I can just I just think it keeps women from feeling like they can really grow, because you stay in a relationship that maybe you either shouldn't be in, or it's hard to grow personally because you feel like you have to be less than because of the financial things. I think it's like a main player to relationship health, the
Right.
health of a good relationship, right?
And you hear a lot of people talking about women who get divorced and then they weren't used to taking care of finances, but you don't hear a lot about my case where I was taking care of the finances. I took care of all of that. I was the one who balanced everything and I knew where everything was going and all of that. The You don't hear a lot of conversations about then when you get divorced, you assume that that's the way it's going to continue. But if you meet someone and he or she, whoever your new partner is also in that role, you have to discuss now, well, no, wait, I'm the money manager. No, I'm the money manager. And like, how is that going to work? Because I'm just used to making everything work over here, and you're just used to making everything work over here. These are important conversations that we need to have. I have a friend who published a book. It's called Do Before I Do. And it's all about things to do with money. And there were just, these things that did not come into my awareness when I was married the first time. So these are important conversations for us to have.
Mm-hmm.
I would absolutely agree. And I think conversation is the key word there. We need to be talking about it. People often think that, it will go away if I don't discuss it. And as you know, that just creates a bigger limiting belief. And I think it's important to know that we can say, well, they do it their way, I do it my way. But really, the conversation is how can we best serve each other? How can we have each other's gifts be more present? Maybe you do a certain thing and you love it more so than the other person, but you might not know that if you don't have the conversation. Maybe they do it out of necessity, but it's not really their zone of genius or their preference. So, in opening up the conversations around money, and that is around who's balancing the checkbook, but it's also where are we investing and what do we want our future to look like? So much of a money conversation is really trying to design what we want our home to feel like, what we want our future to look like, and brainstorming and having these fun conversations and choosing to look at it in such a light that you're designing something together. So I think having that kind of getting over some of that emotional feeling around it, because again, it's just data, and having the conversations and choosing to look at it from a place of elevation, from a place of what do we each do best and how can I best serve you and you serve me. It kind of opens up the door for more opportunity for growth together.
Yeah, I don't even think it's that every woman has like money blocks or anything. I just think it's your habit, what you're used to. I have a friend who, when she was helping me, when I was going through my divorce, and she's like, okay, now, you're starting to date. So if it gets serious, you need to ask him for his financials. You need to look at his tax returns. And I was like, because in my mind, it was like, well, that kind of stuff is private. But really, if you're going into a relationship or another marriage, it is private, the two of you together. And these are really fun conversations that we can have unless we think some kind of conversation is taboo. It makes all the difference if you feel open and, like just have this conversations about what to expect. What do you expect? What do you expect? Amy, do you have maybe like a questionnaire or something that gets women thinking about these kinds of things?
I mean, I think no, I don't have a specific questionnaire because I think it's really specific to each person. But I do feel like I have what I would call intuitive gifts where people don't always know their money questions, but upon having a conversation, we can kind of get to the bottom of them. And, I would say not just women, but really everyone has limiting beliefs generally around finances. That doesn't mean they stay with us for our entire life, but most of the time they're created in childhood. If we look at our limiting beliefs, they're from our parents or from some important figure in our life or from an old, manager, something like that. And we
Mhm.
all have the opportunity to kind of debunk some of those money myths and limiting beliefs and rewrite the stories for ourselves. And I think that is a fun conversation to have, like you were referring to. Like, let's not make it taboo because, again, it's a choice to think about it as being a taboo subject. And we've
Mhm.
kind of, society has made it such. We don't need to know everyone's specific details, but we can talk about things that are broader and bigger scopes for that and have the fun conversations.
You
Yeah,
keep
there's
bringing up
somebody's
fun.
opportunity that's listening to create a game.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Cherry?
I love that you keep bringing up the word fun. Hold on, I gotta start barking.
It's hard to do things one-handed, one-armed paper
But you're
hanger.
crushing it, Sherry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
I think it
crushing it.
is
It's all
fun.
good.
It gets to be a fun conversation. We get to choose joy in our life, right? We get to be, as we say here, unapologetic. And
Exactly.
we get to make the
Mhm.
decision that we're not going to have it be, whether it's money, whether it's relationships, whether it's anything. We can choose whether we want to see it from that negative spin or from a more positive spin. And so much about living your best life, living unapologetically, is choosing to look at things from the perspective of, it's elevating myself, it's elevating the world around me, and it's being a giver. It's realizing that you can offer things. And it's important, I think, I like to talk about gratitude and giving when it comes to money, because oftentimes, we can't receive when our fists are tightly closed. And so we're not giving or receiving when we're in that mindset. So I think it's a fun conversation to have, to talk about. We all have something to give. And when you can look at money or time, talent, and treasure, right? So maybe there's not opportunities for people to necessarily give financially, but there's time and there's talent. And I think that gets you in this space of gratitude and giving. And there is that energetic flow. Money comes and money goes. And when we can sort of get into the wave with it, we can start by just doing time, just giving something. I was the treasurer of everything when I was a CPA in my former life, and then I was a stay-at-home mom. I had 3 kids in 4 years, so it made sense for me to stay home for a period of time. But with my background, when we had 3 kids and we're starting out in our marriage, it was a different financial picture than it is today. But I knew it was important for me to be in the space of giving. So I was the treasurer of everything. And that's what I mean by talent, right? Like, there's always an opportunity to serve others. Um, and I think that puts you into the flow of the giving and receiving. And it opens up the bigger conversations about the design you want for your own life and being in gratitude for what you have, which calls in more abundance.
Yeah, I like that. And, I was thinking when you were talking that when we when we realize that money is energy, it comes and goes, it's energy. So what is the energy of your money talk? If you're like secretive and don't want to talk about it, or you feel like these are things we should not talk about, or these are things that are private, um, then that energy is going to flow over to the money. And so it's about really having these conversations. I think if, people are afraid, have it with yourself first. Like, just sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil and doodle, like write money at the top and what words come to your mind. And then how are you defining these words? I always get in, to me, it's in flow, getting in flow and wordsmithing words and just like, oh, what does that mean to me? How do I define that? Why do I believe that? And it can be fun if you allow it to be.
I think it's such a clever idea to really start to question, and whether it's around money or anything else that you feel like is a place of reservation for yourself, start to look at the ideas. And I love the idea of journaling, and I love the idea of a solo money date. I mean, I think people should be having money dates, whether it's romantic again or money meetings if it's in the business partnership, but really knowing your numbers. And I think it's not just knowing your numbers, but it's also knowing your beliefs around them. So that word association and that recreating and being able to relabel things in a different structure is a super important practice. I love that.
Yeah.
Do
Sherry,
you
you were
work
about to
most?
say something before.
Yeah, I know. Well, then I had to mute out because my dog was going a little crazy. So, um, so do you work mostly with women or do you work as much with couples? Because I know that I've been to some seminars where, they talk about how your partner can have a different money story, and so you've got to, one person could be somebody that loves to spend and somebody else is the opposite. They hate to spend. So how does that work for when
I
you're
mean, inevitably opposites attract, right? So it's a very common theme to see that you have a couple that one is more the saver and one is more the spender. I work with anyone, and I know that is a broad. I mean, my niche is typically women who are in transitions, right? So whether that's divorce, bereavement, job change, sale of home, empty nesting, that sort of thing. But I have
Mhm,
clients
mhm.
from all ages. I have couples and entrepreneurs and small business owners and single people. And it is, there can be differences of opinion when it comes to money, but when we can align on a mutual goal, and we
Mhm.
do that by way of a financial plan, right? Like we're designing a life based on what we spend and what we want to spend. And whether that you're designing that life as a single person or as a couple, we're factoring in the things that bring each other joy.
Mhm.
And then creating the number that's going to be needed to live the best life based on each person's choices. So, yes, there can be differences of opinion, but we can also factor that in when we're creating a financial plan. So it doesn't have to be a point of contention. As long as we're trying to make everyone's needs a priority, it actually works out better. And I think it tends to align the goals, right? Because you're actually creating an end goal that you're working towards together, perhaps because each of you want different things at the end, but they've been factored in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it also is like I see this in my own relationship, me being much more of a comfortable taking risks and my husband not as much. So I think and that probably goes in with the spending and versus saving kind of thing as well. And for me, I love uh being an entrepreneur. I love embodying the law of attraction as a regular, daily practice to bringing in more wealth. And I think, you've been talking about that, the energy, the flow of money is, do you, do you encourage people
I
to study that?
absolutely do. I believe, but I encourage people to get into the energy of manifesting and law of attraction. But what I often remind people is we have to, and I say this with the kindest of intentions, but we have to get off our yoga mat. We can manifest and be in the energy and the spirit of what we want. I believe you see it in your mind's eye and you create that vision, but you
Hmm.
then have to take the aligned action to
Hmm.
get there. And I
Hmm.
think sometimes that's where the miscommunication and the law of attraction and manifesting happens is
Hmm.
we believe it and we think, oh, I've created this vision, I'm ready to receive it, but we're missing some action steps, right? Following the breadcrumbs
Yeah.
for the opportunities that are presenting themselves so that we can actually get to the place that we've seen in our mind's eye and the goal that we're trying to achieve.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
1000% believe in, and I've seen the law of attraction and the practice of manifesting work miracles in my own life, and
Hmm.
also recognizing that I too had to take steps based on those goals.
Right. I
Yeah.
heard a minister say one time, his version of that is pray and move your feet.
Oh, love that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about inspired action, not like, okay, I'm going to move this over here, and now I'm going to move it over here. And gosh, none of this is working. So what else can I do? When we have that frantic action, or that, squirrel, oh, I'll go do that now. When we're doing that, when we're caught up in that energy, we're not in a place of receiving. Another thing that comes to mind, what you're talking about, and I'm going back to, divorce, and it doesn't it doesn't necessarily have to be getting a divorce, because I believe that divorce has three stages: thinking about it, going through it, and putting it behind you. Because I believe that every woman at some time, and men too, but I'm just talking about women because I can only speak from personal experience. Every woman who's married at some time has thought about divorce, or maybe her words in her head are, what would my life be like if? Not necessarily meaning that she needs to get divorced, but just wondering, like the road not taken, so to speak. And when those thoughts come up, we fear those thoughts, like, oh my gosh, I gotta suck that back in. What's wrong with me? I must be a horrible person. I've got a beautiful life. What's wrong with me? But really, any idea that comes into our head is worth looking at. So maybe it's okay, maybe there is something that is constantly coming up for you that you just keep shoving back down, and you think that getting away from it all is the only way that's going to help that. So, thinking about divorce, going through it, or putting it behind you, all three stages have a money component to it, because how are you manifesting? We're manifesting all the time. It's just we're either manifesting what we want or we're manifesting what we don't want. So, having those conversations with yourself is so powerful. And we really forget how powerful we are.
I would agree. And I think too, when you're in the space of law of attraction or manifesting, like you're holding the vision for where you want to be, but you don't have to have a complete roadmap laid out to get yourself there. And what I like to encourage people to do is literally just follow the next breadcrumb. Like if something is coming into your field, that's there for a reason, and whether and to choose to look at it as such, and not I always joke, like, you don't need the yellow brick road, right? There's an entire rainbow, and if we actually knew the yellow brick road and every step to get there, we might thwart our efforts because it might seem too difficult, or it might seem like the path you don't want to take. So to your point of taking that inspired or aligned action, if something is coming closer to you, and I use this by way of even talking about envy, I encourage people to never feel envious of what someone else has or what someone else is doing, because in my opinion, if it's even in your field and you're able to see that they have it or that they're doing it, then it's just circling closer to you. And that's what I mean by following the breadcrumbs. Like if it's coming into your mind's eye or your attention, you're right. Take a look at it. It might be the road to take, it might not be, but it's there to teach you, and it's there for a reason. And you don't need to know 16 steps down the road. You just need to follow the next ones.
Yeah. It's like Jack Canfield says, when you're driving at night and you've got your headlights on, you don't need to see 50 miles ahead of you. You only need to see as far as your headlights can, throw the beam. And that's the way to think about it.
Absolutely. I love a visual to explain the concepts, right? Like it helps people's brains kind of click in and make sense. So I think that's a great analogy.
Yeah. So what do you suggest? I know we probably, because I just jumped on the divorce thing at the very beginning of the conversation, but conversations go where they're
meant to
go.
go.
Yeah. And so what do you suggest for women who are in any of the three stages of divorce, thinking about it, going through it? Because I think sometimes a woman could be in a marriage and maybe things aren't going as well as she'd like them to financially. So her thoughts are, oh gosh, if I were married to someone rich, or if, we have all these ifs. And sometimes we think, if I were married to someone rich, or if I were richer. And again, it's not about money. It's about energy. It's about, what is coming up for you. But just to put it in dollars, thinking about the dollars, how would you counsel women in one of these three stages?
I mean, I think that's a great question. And I would counsel them to say, first of all, I always recommend people clean up their own side of the street when they're in a particular place, to feel like maybe they are looking at going somewhere on their own. Like, so are you taking appropriate action to know your numbers? Are you taking appropriate action to push yourself towards a future goal? Are you having the conversations? And I think there are people such as myself and other that are willing to have the conversation. Sometimes you just need to talk it out. I think a lot of times women, we just want another ear to have the conversations with. So I would encourage you to reach out to a financial professional and talk through some scenarios. I would encourage women to look at, okay, what is it that I'm seeking by way of fulfillment? Is it from a career? And I always encourage women sometimes never to speak to any negative situations that people need to exit, but I want to remind people the grass is always greener. We're always looking to jump somewhere else to create a fix that's
Right.
really an internal guidelight that needs to maybe be looked at. So I would say reach out to a financial professional, make sure that you are doing the best that you can and showing up in your highest self and making choices that are going to align for a future that you are designing. Yeah, I mean,
How do you allay the fear of a woman going, well, I can't afford to reach out to a financial planner?
well, I don't charge anyone for a conversation. So I think it's a matter of, again, that's a limiting belief.
Yeah.
And that keeps us small and it keeps us stuck and it keeps us swirling in a negative pattern when we don't know. And, you know, you can always argue, do you know that to be 100% true? And the answer is no, I don't. Right. And I think it's having those conversations with your friends and being a friend who's holding someone accountable to say, well, have you tried? Have you reached out? Or maybe I could send you someone in my referral network. I think women need to lift each other up. My belief is that wealthy women change the world because I don't want anyone to give from an empty cup. And women oftentimes try to do that. It doesn't serve them well. And I don't actually want you to give from your cup that's just full because you need that to live your best life. So when there's overflow and abundance, that's when we can show up as our highest self and serve others in the world. So I think it's a matter of looking at our friends and our connections and our limiting beliefs and choosing to reach out and just take that next step. You don't know until you ask. And most likely we have amazing women friends. We can reach out and say, do you know someone? Can you refer someone? And eventually you'll get to that person that you're meant to speak to.
Absolutely. And
Right.
I love what you said. It's like, I think there are a lot of women who don't know that most financial planners will have a conversation with you for free. And also, you know, if you have a limiting belief that, oh, she's going to try to talk me into something, well, that's a limiting belief. And all of this comes down to feelings of worthiness. Do you
Mhm.
feel you're worthy? And that's where I think we get stuck a lot because we're so used to serving people and serving others, putting everybody's wants and needs before our own. And we forget to serve ourselves first, fill our own cup first, and then serve from the overflow instead of, you know, being drained all the time.
I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I love this conversation because I feel that the more money talks we can have, it's and make it fun, you know, make it fun, not like, oh gosh, you know, I feel intimidated. And of course, we can only make it fun if we are willing to do the inner work, meaning if I am feeling something negative about it, that's on me. That's something that I have the opportunity to work on. And then hopefully, you know, we are surrounding ourselves with women who will take us aside and say, you know, I heard you mention X, Y, and Z. Have you ever thought about saying this differently or putting it into, you know, softer words, something like that? This is where we can really support each other because we've been there and we're not trying to put someone down. We're just trying to say, oh, I've been there. You know, let me give you a piece of something that I've learned.
And oftentimes, when we're looking to shift the blame to someone else, people are in our life a lot of times to be a mirror for our own selves.
Yeah.
So I would say before we're trying to put the blame or the reason on someone else, that's a really great opportunity to turn it back around and see how you can apply that to your own self and look at your own, again, issues with worthiness, beliefs, like where are these stories coming from? Because we can't outsource it to everyone else. We have to take ownership. And if I do anything, it's encourage women to really take ownership of their own lives, of their own money story, even when they're in a partnership. That's not to say that, you aren't being a team player. But again, like we talked about, you need to clean up your side of the street. And it's not always outside of you where the work needs to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. I love it.
Thank you.
Sherry, what are you thinking? I can see that the wheels are turning.
Well, I just want to say to you, Amy, I think that you have I love the feminine side of it not just being about the numbers, but about the emotions, the history, the relationship, the stories that we've learned as children, oftentimes about our relationship with money, that you're bringing all of that in. There's so much wisdom in this. And I think it does really require for women to, face some fears and be in a safe place, have that taken away, that it's not just about, knowing, having all the answers or knowing exactly where you want to go, and having to really take it one step at a time, because I think that as women, we are at some level, I think for most of us, it gets drilled in about being taken care of.
Yeah.
I think maybe, like, I have three daughters, so I'm thinking maybe my daughters don't have that, because that generation, I think, maybe has flipped. At least it's flipped more. But I know I have it. I mean, I know I was treated differently. I have three brothers. I'm the only girl. I know I was treated differently. My father talked to me differently about my future than he did. I mean, he literally wanted me to work and stay at home and skip college. He was going to buy me a car if I would do that, um, because he wanted my help in the restaurant that we had, a family-owned business. He never would have said that to my brothers. It just never would have come up, So as much as I have the strong personality, I'm really the driver in my relationship. I'm the risk taker, the willing, passionate entrepreneur. My husband was kind of got forced into being an entrepreneur. I still have a bit of that, in me. And I think when you're a mother and then there's all that nurturing, I mean, it just gets complicated for women. So I just really appreciate the way that you are approaching this whole conversation and this whole way of growth, because there's huge amounts of growth, I think, needed, in order to have the best kind of relationship with money, and therefore the most abundant life is to be able
I
to really explore
love
all
that
of
you
that.
shared that story. I think it's such a sign of how far we've come, right? For you to share that personal experience I know that you're raising your own daughters with a different mindset. And I want to encourage people to understand that people think financial planning and the financial conversation is, to your point, all about the numbers. But in fact, we say that it's probably only about 20% the numbers. And by that, it's addition and subtraction, because I hear often, I'm not good with math, I don't understand. But
Right.
80% of it is the emotions that are tied to money, the fear, the grief, the relationships, the limiting beliefs, the stories we learned. And people will say, oh, well, money was fine. We didn't talk about it in our house. Well, that is a bit of a direction note as well. When it's not talked about, or if you didn't talk about your own, what were the conversations around other people's financial status? So it's so much of it is the emotional piece, which is why I think it's important to have someone that you can have those conversations with, whether it's myself or someone else in the financial industry. Because again, I want to let everyone know the numbers aren't the difficult part. It's the conversations around the numbers where people get hung up.
Yeah. And that's the emotional part, that the body remembers, we hold on to those emotions. Everything's energy, and emotions are energy in motion. So those conversations are gold. Absolute gold. Amy, we are going to put your information in the description, but please tell people, how they can get a hold of you, or what's the best way to contact you.
Thank you. Yes, so I work for IRC Wealth. Our website is ircwealth.com. My email is Amy, AMY, at ircwealth.com. You can find me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect on there. And I delight in having money conversations with people. There's never a charge to put time on my calendar and to have a conversation around your own beliefs around money. I am not someone who's seeking high pressure sales. I don't sell any commission-based products. I don't, charge for a financial plan, an initial meeting. So I would delight in having conversations with anyone that is curious or feels like they want someone to walk on that financial journey with them.
That's
Excellent.
wonderful. What a
There you
great
go.
service.
Money from the heart. Yeah.
So important. So important.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your heart and your message with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I am delighted to be here with the both of you, and any conversations we can have about money that might help someone else are conversations well spent. So thank you.
You are most welcome. And for those of you watching, remember, leave some comments because you just never know. Someone's watching this and they're too timid to say anything, but you might leave a comment and they will think, oh, I'm so glad she said that because I really was thinking that. And this is how we support each other. This is how we co-create. This is how we are collaborative together. So like, share, comment, subscribe. Let us know how we can support you because that's what we're here for. In the meantime, this is Nancy Muller saying ciao for now. Amy?
I hope everyone has the most abundant day. And I'm just grateful to have been here. Thank you.
Fabulous. Sherry?
Love these conversations. They're empowering. I always I learn so much, so I'm inspired. And I was going to say, if anybody's looking for a retreat, Amy, you're going to be one of the speakers at the retreat next week. So if you want to come to Atlanta, reach out to us and we can tell you how Amy's one of it's going to be one of the top wise women pouring into us next week about being an entrepreneur.
So excited.
I am so excited.
Fantastic.
So Nancy, get on a plane.
Thank you.
You can come.
Thank you, ladies.